Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in soft snowfall and quiet expectations, but for Emma Carter, it felt heavier than any winter she had known. The house was decorated the way it always had been. Twinkling lights around the windows, a tall Christmas tree glowing warmly in the living room, and the scent of cinnamon and pine filling the air. Yet something was missing. Or rather, something was breaking. Emma sat at the dining table, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the papers in front of her. Divorce papers. Her signature already written at the bottom of each page, ink still fresh, as if the decision itself had been made only moments ago. In truth, it had taken months of sleepless nights, quiet tears, and unanswered questions to reach this point. Across the room, Daniel Carter stood by the window, watching snow fall gently onto the empty street. Once, that sight had brought them together, two young souls dreaming of a future filled with love, laughter, and children running through snow-covered yards. Tonight, it only reminded them of how far apart they had grown. Their marriage hadn't collapsed because of betrayal or cruelty. It had faded slowly, painfully, like a song losing its melody. Daniel had become consumed by his career, always chasing deadlines and promotions, promising that things would get better soon. Emma had waited, and waited, until loneliness became louder than hope. "I'll leave tonight," Emma said softly, breaking the silence. Daniel turned, surprise and regret flickering across his face. "On Christmas Eve." She nodded. "I think it's kinder this way." He wanted to argue, to beg her to stay, but something in her eyes told him the decision was already final. Or so he thought. Emma stood up, collecting her coat and scarf. She moved toward the hallway, then stopped. Her hand slipped into her pocket, and for a moment, she hesitated. Quietly, without saying a word, she placed a small white object on the table, near the divorce papers. Daniel didn't notice. Emma opened the door, letting the cold air rush in, and stepped out into the night. Snowflakes settled in her hair as she walked away from the life she once believed would last forever. The door closed softly behind her, but the silence that followed was deafening. Daniel remained still, staring at the place where she had stood moments ago. His chest felt tight, as if something important had slipped away, something he couldn't yet name. He sat down slowly at the table, his eyes falling on the divorce papers again. That's when he noticed the small object beside them, a pregnancy test. His breath caught. Hands shaking, he picked it up. 2 lines clear, undeniable. The room spun as realization crashed over him. Emma was pregnant, their child, and she had left without telling him. Memories flooded his mind, Emma's distant looks, her sudden fatigue, the quiet sadness she carried. How blind he had been, how selfish. Without thinking, Daniel grabbed his coat and keys and ran out into the snow. Emma walked through the silent streets, tears freezing on her cheeks. She had imagined this moment differently. She had planned to tell Daniel about the baby weeks ago, but every time she tried, he was too busy, too distracted, too far away. Signing the divorce papers hadn't erased her love for him. It had only buried it under years of disappointment. Leaving the pregnancy test behind was her way of telling the truth without begging him to stay. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed space to breathe, to protect her heart and the tiny life growing inside her. Suddenly, headlights appeared behind her, cutting through the falling snow. "Emma," Daniel's voice called out, breaking. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. He rushed toward her, breathless, eyes filled with panic and hope all at once. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, holding up the test. Tears spilled freely now. "I wanted to," she whispered. "But I was tired of talking to someone who wasn't listening." "I'm listening now," he said, voice shaking. "Please, don't walk away." They stood there in the snow, the world silent around them, as if time itself had paused to watch what would happen next. Daniel fell to his knees, uncaring of the cold. "I know I failed you," he said. "I chose work over us, over you. But losing you, losing our child, that terrifies me more than anything." Emma covered her mouth, sobbing. "Love isn't just words, Daniel. I needed you. I still do." He stood and gently took her hands. "Let me be better. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now." She looked into his eyes, searching for the man she had fallen in love with years ago. This time, she saw him, truly present. truly afraid of losing her. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to hope again," she said. "I'll carry the hope for both of us," he replied. They returned home together, not as a solved couple, but as two people willing to try again. The Christmas lights still glowed, but now they felt warmer. Real. Daniel tore up the divorce papers, piece by piece, letting them fall into the trash. Emma sat quietly, one hand resting on her stomach, her heart still cautious but no longer empty. That night they really talked. For the first time in years. About fears, dreams, mistakes, and the child who had already changed everything. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, as if offering a fresh beginning. Months later, on a spring morning filled with sunlight, Emma held their newborn daughter in her arms. Daniel stood beside her, tears in his eyes, knowing that love wasn't something you found once, it was something you chose again and again. That Christmas Eve, which had nearly ended their story, became the moment it truly began. Because sometimes, the most beautiful love stories are born from broken moments, quiet courage, and a single truth left behind on a table.